Okay, well, happy Tuesday, everyone. It looks like we're live. Thank you for joining us for the second installment of our Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Campus Center Co-Curricular series. Really excited for you to be joining us this week. I want to say once again, happy Hispanic Heritage Month to everyone. And so before we get fully started with our conversation, which I'm super excited about, I wanted to let you know about a couple of different things. And so first of all, as a part of our Hispanic Heritage Month celebration, right here on our homepage, you can click this link here. Of course, our theme for the month is Unidos through COVID-19. And so make sure you go to our homepage and you can click here on this link and you'll get a copy of all the different events for the month. You can also go over to our diversity page. You may be wondering, how do I get information on Andrew's diversity? I'm just going to do it live for you here. So you go to our diversity page, and if you click on our Divino blog, which is where we keep all of our different blogs, you'll find a note there from me, from our office, commemorating Hispanic Heritage Month, talking about also this co-curricular series that we're doing. And there's also a list of the events there as well. So you can either go to our homepage or right here to our Divino blog in order to get the information that you need. As you see there, let us know where you're watching from. Jump in the comments. We're excited to hear from you and learn more about where you're joining us from. So please feel free to do that. The other thing I'll let you know is, again, as I talked about last week, and if you missed our conversation last week with Pastor Daniel Duffus, I really encourage you to jump back and check that out. It was a really powerful conversation on the Brown Church. But we also talked about our Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Campus Center. You can find information on that campus center right here, again, linked to our diversity page. There's information on the action plan. And as I always love mentioning, we have a large list of anti-racism resources, which you can avail yourself of. And actually today, we're going to talk to the authors of a book, which is part of one of the resources that we have here on our website. And I'm really excited about that. And we'll get to that conversation in a couple of minutes. The next thing that I want to make you aware of, again, and we'll talk more about this soon, is we have our voting week. Our voting emphasis week is going to be happening October 5 through 9. Please make sure that you keep an eye out for information about that. We'll be sending out information probably within this next week. We really think it's important for you to engage in our political process. And of course, we don't talk, in direct terms about who you should vote for or things of that nature. And it's not just about the presidential election, but there are state and local elections that are really important for you to pay attention to, whether that's here in Michigan or in your home state. So during that week in particular, we're going to be set up here in our campus center, and we're going to be giving you the opportunity to get registered to vote. And so we'll have representatives from our community that are here to help us with that. We'll, of course, hold to our COVID-19 safety protocols, but I wanted to make you aware of that so you can start getting ready. And we're also creating a voter information link to our website. By the time we have our part 3 of our co-curricular series, I'll be able to show you that website that we've been working on. And I've been doing that in partnership with my colleagues, Dr. Steve Yeagley, as well as our head men's residence hall dean, Donnie Keel. They've been really partnering with me on that initiative. And so we're excited about getting that information to you. So once again, we want you to let us know where you're watching from. We also would invite you to share this video with the hashtag TRHTAU. That's TRHTAU, so that other folks can get a copy of this episode, whether it's now, whether you're watching this archive, whether you want to host a watch party, something to that effect. We want to get this great information out to everyone. And lastly, as I'll mention, well, 2 last things I'll mention. Number 1, if you want to get involved with our campus center, if this conversation inspires you, feel free to email us at diversity@andrews.edu, and we will get you plugged in to that. And I know that also our students who are tuning in, you're probably wondering, where do I get my co-curricular credit? I'm not going to say that that's completely why you're here, but I know that that's really important part of why you're here, and we want to honor that. There should be a link in the description to this video, which will take you to a link where you can get your co-curricular credit. We'll also put it in the chat towards the end of the conversation so that it's easier for you to get it. And so without further ado, I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to be having this morning, this Tuesday morning into the afternoon. And it's with two, I consider friends of mine, two inspirations, Larry and Sandy Feldman. They are the authors of this book. I'm going to flash it on the screen a couple different times. Building Bridges Across the Racial Divide by Larry and Sandy Feldman. Just a powerful book on building bridges, and it's well needed during this time. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring Larry and Sandy into our conversation now. Hello, Larry and Sandy. How are you both doing?
Hi, Michael. We're doing good. Great to be with you.
Awesome. So glad that you all were able to find some time to be with us. And we're really grateful to have this conversation with you again on the importance of building bridges and the importance of committing to anti-racism work. That's a big part of our Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center's focus points. We're also heavily focused on amplifying non-dominant narratives. And I know that you both have been champions of that for so long. And I'm really grateful for all the work that you do, not just here in our local community, but wherever you've been. And so as we get started here, you know, of course, I know so much wonderful information about you, but we have viewers who perhaps don't. And so if you could just let us know everything, you know, where you're from, where you all are at right now, what you all do professionally, because I think that's really important work as well, and what has brought you into this powerful work that you all have been doing for so many years.
Well, we're so grateful to be with you, Michael, and we're so impressed with the work that you're doing for in your anti-racism work and the work that's coming out of Andrews University. It gives us hope. We feel like we can pass the baton to some of the young talent that's doing such a great job inspiring others. So it's great to be with you.
Great to have you, yeah.
We've been in this battle for a long time. We were both active in the civil rights movement. I was in St. Louis. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri originally. And there was a huge upheaval then during civil rights, and many of us took to the streets and were part of the organizations then. And it saddens me to see that we haven't made more progress and that we're back to watching these agonizing videos and seeing injustice and needing to band together to find ways to make it be better. Larry and I were active in Oak Park. We lived in Oak Park outside of Chicago just before we came to Michigan. And we were involved in a group there called Project Unity. When we came to Michigan, we were stunned by how segregated it is. It felt like a step back into 1940. And we had read Alex Kotlowitz's book, The Other Side of the River, and were startled about an event that had happened in the Benton Harbor, St. Joe area. And Alex Kotlowitz's take that one event, the death of a young Black man, allowed him to look closely at a pattern of segregation and mistrust that exists across the United States. So maybe, Lear, do you want to pick up from there to say part of what we then 22 years ago started here in Michigan?
Sure. Our backgrounds are a little different. I grew up in Baltimore and was part of some of the civil rights events in the 60s, the 1960s, and we've been active ever since. When we moved here, soon after the publication of Alex Kotlowitz's book, a group of us came together at Lake Michigan College to form a race relations council, and that group has been meeting ever since. It's a group of people of multiple different racial groups, and our mission is twofold. One is to build bridges between people of different racial backgrounds, and to do everything we can to fight for equity and equality, and to decrease any hierarchy based on white supremacy.
Mm.
There were a number of initiatives that we began at about the same time, Michael, and the heartening part is that all of these initiatives live on today. So we have the adult initiative, and those relationships have become really very important friendships in all of our lives. And some of the projects we've done, we feel really proud of in terms of addressing things like housing disparities and redlining and health disparities. But also Larry's wearing our t-shirt from another initiative we were in, the Calling All Colors initiative, which is diversity education for children. We serve 1,000 children every school year, grades 1 through 4. We're happy to tell details of that. We also, 21 years ago, began a multiracial children's choir, ages 4 to 18. And so we have hundreds of kids who are now adults who are in each other's weddings and godparents to each other's babies across racial and ethnic lines.
To work with the kids has been very inspiring and very hopeful. The work with the adults, not as much. We remain hopeful, but it's been much easier to bring kids together in positive ways across racial lines than adults.
Great.
The adults, however, that have been in our projects,
the adults in the Race Relations Council, of course, is an exception.
And I'll always remember the inauguration of President Obama and sitting with our intimate friends involving educators, African-American background, who and experiencing how moving this was for us, but how even more powerful the experience was for them, given what they experienced in their lives. So that kind of intimacy, I think most people don't have a chance to have in this nation. And it really deprives them of the richest possibilities.
Yeah.
We are encouraged by some of the recent developments with adults. The Stronger Together movement that Trenton Bowens and some other good folks have put together, recent gathering in Benton Harbor, at which there were a number of very powerful speakers, including Michael Nixon, who was just terrific.
Who's that guy? I don't know where he came from. Yeah. No, it was great. That was the last time we saw each other, and it was great to see you both there. And even though I didn't know you'd be there, I knew you'd be there, because anytime there's an event of the sort in our area, unless you have something else really pressing that you've already committed to, I know that you're going to be there. And so with that being said, I did want you both maybe to talk a little bit more about your professional training and just how, maybe how that has helped to inform some of your advocacy work, and how that's even connected. And we're going to talk a bit more about your book and some of the information that you've placed into there and how your training has helped to inform what you put in the book. But maybe we can start by you both sort of letting folks know a little bit more about that.
Sure. We're both mental health professionals. I'm a psychiatrist, and he's a clinical social worker, specializing in psychiatric psychotherapy and psychiatric matters, primarily psychotherapy. And certainly being attuned to what goes on psychologically with folks has been a very important part of how we've been able to try to understand things like resistance to building bridges, denial of racial problems. It's been striking how many white folks in Southwest Michigan have said to us, well, there aren't any racial problems.
Yeah.
One person said, as long as the people who live in Benton Harbor stay in Benton Harbor and the people in St. Joe stay in St. Joe, we don't have any problems.
No problems.
Wow. Wow.
Now, I think it's been, we've felt really fortunate that our experiences in our own family and then our educational experiences gave us some of the tools we needed to try to be effective in social justice work. And I think understanding where people are coming from psychologically has been really important in being able to maintain some of the conversations. I think that often when people run into folks who hold stereotypical views or express a bias, the reaction is often to feel angry and to act in anger and to begin by responding in a shaming, blaming way. There's an old saying in Judaism, the translation is, flowers don't open up to thunder. And I think that if our goal is to create meaningful conversations, to be able to develop a richer understanding, then we've got to manage our own feelings in a way that allows the conversation to be productive. And part of that is being willing to listen and not prepare your next argument, but instead to listen for the feelings behind the words that you're hearing. And one of the things we see again and again is the people that speak most out of their stereotypical views and their conscious and unconscious bias are often people that are scared. Often people that actually don't have a lot of faith in their own ability to be effective in the world, and their position in the hierarchy feels as if it's threatened, and they're not that sure that they can retain a space of their own. So if we understand that behind all that hostility, there's fear and insecurity, that allows us to go further in the conversation and perhaps open minds even just a little bit so they might perceive some things differently.
I agree with that. But at the same time, I think it's important that we speak out in clear, strong language and try to engage people around what's right and what needs to be done. Not everybody will be able to have that conversation, but we still need to be clear about what we believe is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's funny what just happened, Michael, because Larry and I have team taught the class at Lake Michigan College. For years in Chicago, we did consultation groups for seasoned therapists, psychologists, and clinical social workers. And the people would say we were like that segment on 60 Minutes that where, and I don't remember what that was called, but where there would be, we would both agree on something. But then Larry would put his own special spin on it, and I might have a different way of framing it. And so that way, I think we reached a broader audience because folks could listen to whatever language was most resonant with how they saw it, and then they were also exposed to another point of view.
We complement each other.
Yeah, no, that's really important, and you both make room for both of your voices to be amplified, and I think that's beautiful because that's not always the case. Not even just in this work, but in a marital context, and so that's really great to see. And so I wanted to pivot a little bit. You know, Sandy, you just spoke to your faith and the concept from Judaism, and I think that's an important part of this discussion. You know, part of why I wanted to speak to you both amidst the multitude of reasons that it's good to talk to you both is the fact that here within our Christian community, as we both have talked, as the three of us have talked about, there are oftentimes we can sort of get closed into our own bubble, you know, and we see things sort of from, you know, the Christian perspective, and you know, to be frank, we have enough to disagree about, you know, within that context. But I think that one of the more powerful opportunities that we've at times missed out on is being able to connect with our brothers and sisters from other faiths and being able to understand the different perspectives that we have, but also the powerful similarities that we have, you know, that we oftentimes overlook. So if you could both for a few moments maybe talk a bit about how your faith tradition, your faith lens, first of all, how that is a powerful part of who you are as people, as humans, but then also how that faith tradition informed your activism, your anti-racism work, and your willingness to continue to be in the fight.
I'm so glad that you asked about that, because I do think that we have a real problem, even within the group of us that are committed to social justice work, of folks assuming that if you're doing this work, that you're doing it because, as people have said to me, you must be a real committed Christian. That there is this automatic assumption that people of the faith are not also fighting for the same love thy neighbor concept.
Right.
So one of the things we've recently felt proud about is that our son in Santa Cruz, who's very active in his Jewish congregation, that's a very forward-looking, progressive, social justice-oriented congregation. He's also their representative to a group in Santa Cruz called Tents of Abraham. And the idea is that all of us should be under the tent, that there are some fundamental similarities in how we see the world and feel responsible for all our brothers and sisters that should be binding us together in this work. So it's an element of what we call in Judaism, lador bador, from generation to generation. So pass on that sense of cause and join with other people.
One of the core commitments of Judaism is tikkun olam, which translates to repair the world. And that idea is that when the Bible says that the Jewish people were selected by God for some special purpose, our understanding is, and I don't think it's limited to Jewish people, that what God wants us to do is to do everything we can to make this world a better place. And so that tradition is definitely part of what we draw from.
Yeah.
The other part of what we draw from, and this is not so much a matter of faith, except persecuting people of a particular faith, is the history of persecution of the Jewish people. And the feeling that we both have about that is never again, and never again doesn't just mean never again to Jews. It means never again to anybody.
My first assignment as a young social worker, Michael, was at a Jewish Center for Aged, where my caseload involved 35 survivors of the death camps. And understanding that tragedy was really important to me. And then feeling, as Larry said, that never again commitment, that this should happen to no people, that genocide, slavery, that these horrible elements of our history, our shared history, should be no more. And so I think that compelled me. And I think the other thing, because we're talking on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, that there is a tradition in Judaism. There is a belief, the word for sin isn't translated exactly that way in Judaism. The word means off target.
Missing the mark.
Missing the mark. And so that means we're not inherently damaged people. We're people with potential. And so each of us needs to use that potential to better the world. And so in Rosh Hashanah, the period between Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and Yom Kippur, when that book of introspection is closed somewhat, we're to evaluate how we've lived our life and how we've treated our brothers and sisters. We're supposed to take this fearless moral inventory and take ourselves to task and regret and make amends for things we could have done better, and make a commitment that the new year will be full of work for a better world.
And a very similar process is what we hope our country will take, an honest look at what we've done right and what we've done wrong and what we are currently doing right and wrong, and celebrate what we're doing right and do everything we can to change what we're doing wrong.
You know, the other Jewish element that seems relevant in your question, Michael, is in the therapy office above my head, I have a script from Hillel, taken from the ancient Jewish writings in the Pirkei Avot. And the Hebrew is in a beautiful painted calligraphy, and then the translation underneath. And it's those 3 lines. If I am not for myself, who is for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? If not now, when? And that call to action that Larry describes fits so well with Hillel's last words. And that first, if I'm not for myself, is not about selfishness. It's about use your gifts and take care of you so that you can make a difference. And then don't be so absorbed in yourself that you miss the needs all around you.
Yeah.
And now.
Wow. No, that's just powerful. And, you know, and I know, I'm sure for our viewers, and I know for myself, I'm always amazed at the similarities, the connection points in what you're sharing, you know, with the Christian tradition. I think oftentimes people forget the fact that, for those of us, you know, who are Christians, that Jesus came to the earth as a Jew. You know, he didn't come to the earth and say, hey, we're all Christians. You know, that's something that, you know, that label came after, you know, and so there was a deep connection to the Jewish tradition, you know, I believe, in his work. So I'd say and as you were talking about and thinking about the Abrahamic faiths and, you know, people of the book, as we say. And so, you know, not just Christians and Jews, but also our Muslim brothers and sisters, and how there's so many, I think, wonderful opportunities to find those connection points and understanding that it really is about here in our community and in our nation and in our world, building a more connected spiritual community, people of faith, people of goodwill, who from the motivations of their traditions are ready and willing to rise up and say, as you've said, that, you know, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And if it's not, it may not be me today, but it could be me tomorrow. And if it's not me today, who is it today? And who am I being called to stand alongside? And so I just think that's really powerful, that the connection points that you all are bringing out, even in your answers.
Well, we appreciate that, and we appreciate your participation in the Interfaith Action Group in Southwest Michigan, which is trying to make those connections happen every day. And you've been an important part of that group.
Great. No,
it's
thank
also
you.
reminding me that we should reference the Brave Talks that were a spin-off of Community Grand Rounds here in Southwest Michigan, where really there are ongoing conversations between small clusters of Black and white folks that are meeting in people's homes and trying to grapple directly with some of these crucial issues. And I do think, I'm glad that Larry mentioned the interfaith. I think that we need to fortify ourselves for this marathon, because anti-racism work isn't a sprint, you know, it's a marathon. And we need to fortify ourselves with the work of those other groups that are still working at it, chipping away, trying to make a difference.
And collaborate. If we all pull together, we're going to have much more of an impact than if we try to do it separately.
Yeah, that's really good. So 2 quick things with that. You guys brought out 2 really wonderful organizations. First, Interfaith Action. So I want to give a huge shout out to Reverend Dr. Simone, who is a big part of that, and who's been really a driving force behind a lot of that work that we partner with a lot. And you mentioned Brave Talks and Community Grand Rounds, and I should also mention that Spectrum Health Lakeland, they are a huge partner of ours in this work. My colleague, Jerry Price, in particular, who's their head of diversity for Spectrum Health Lakeland, we've already been in conversations about how we can collaborate and connect, in particular, our racial healing circle model through TRHT work with their community ground rounds, brave talks. And because, as you just mentioned, maybe to borrow from Trenton and them group, we are stronger together, and so, it's really important for us to find those connection points and to continue to build so that we can continue telling and creating a powerful narrative here in Southwest Michigan. I kind of look at this as sort of the little engine that could here in the state. And so excited about the future for sure. Yeah. So I wanted to transition a bit again. There are lots of folks who, there's a lot of conversations around what does it mean to be a good ally in the fight for racial justice, and how can folks from, the historical majority groups, and that's sort of nuanced for you all, because even though obviously you're white passing, you come from a Jewish heritage, which obviously includes, as you've mentioned, genocide, oppression, and bigotry, and so you very much share in that legacy, and maybe I think for you all gives you a particular understanding of what it means to be mistreated in that way. And so, but for maybe other folks who don't have that particular lens, how would you say that they can be, better allies and accomplices in the fight for racial justice as we start transitioning closer to more of this idea around how do we become bridge builders as opposed to builders of walls?
Yes. I think the first thing is to be active listeners and to acknowledge, and this is true for us as well, that we don't have firsthand experience of what people of color experience. And so the first thing is that we have to listen, and we have to increase our understanding of what those experiences are like. And then secondly, we have to be committed to doing everything that we can do to influence white people, because that's where the discrimination is coming from. That's where the notions of white supremacy are coming from. And so that's the group of people that we need to do all we can to influence.
I think that Larry's point is so important in terms of the burden shifting off of the shoulders of African Americans who have had to deal with racism in big and small ways every day of their life, and onto the shoulders of those people who have been able to have white privilege. Even if they're not conscious of it, even if they're not aware of the doors that were open for them, the apartments that were rented to them, the scholarship that was granted to them, simply because the promotion that they were given, simply because they looked like the supervisor or the parents and grandparents that went to the university before. I think that we've been struck by how few of our college students even understand the concept of white privilege and how much pushback there is when we encounter that. So I think it's important for us to feel a responsibility to do a lot of the work. Some of the diversity folks that we know that have been in the trenches for years, that are people of color, have said to us recently, I'm emotionally exhausted. I'm too tired to keep fighting this fight. Please carry on. And I think we have to respect that. That's part of why the young warriors like yourself are so important. I think that we hear that message. Another close friend said, I don't want to do another class or run another conference where I'm dismissed as still another angry Black woman. And so I think Larry's point about listen, hear what people need, determine your role as an ally based on what you hear.
We're encouraged by the younger generation stepping up in some very important ways. When the St. Joseph City Commission was considering putting a Black Lives Matter mural on the street in front of St. Joe High School, over 1,000 students signed a petition. St. Joe High School students, the vast majority of whom are white. and elicited another 1,000 people from the community. So now there's more than 2,000 people who have signed that petition. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the St. Joe Commission decided that for legal reasons, apparently there's an ordinance in St. Joe, they tell us, that forbids putting things on the street. So they opted not to do that, but said they would commit to doing something else that would be powerful. And we're going to do all we can to hold them to that, because something powerful needs to happen.
You know, the other thought I have about allyship is something that was stressed again and again 2 years ago now, when we went to the Othering and Belonging Conference that was run by the Haas Institute and spearheaded by John Powell, the civil rights attorney and college professor and writer. And when he started this conference, there were a couple hundred people. And then the next year, there were 500. And when we were there the year before last, there were 1,500 of us.
Wow.
And he opened the conference by taking a great deal of time to look around the hall. And then he greeted us with the African phrase, Sawabona, Sawabona, which translates literally to I see you. But in the African language, it really means I see your value. I see that there's a person here worth knowing. I see that there's a person worth listening to. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can do as allies, is start to see the people around us. Larry and I gave a book talk in Oak Park, and a woman said to us, I've worked hand in hand with a Black woman in my company for, was it 30 years?
Many years.
Almost 30 years. She said, I don't know if she has children. I don't know where she lives.
Wow.
I see her as the person that does part B of this task. I don't see her. So, Sawabona, I see you.
Reaching out to people who, from different backgrounds, is clearly something critically important that all of us can do.
Well, that's great, and I mean, I know that there's so much you all could share. I do want to transition a bit to talk to you both about this wonderful book, Building Bridges Across the Racial Divide, which really continues this conversation that we've just started. For folks who are interested in getting the book, I did place a link there. It's available also on Amazon, things of that nature. Just a quick secret, I try to not provide Amazon links for books these days, but if you want to find it there, you can. And we'll also place this link in the chat as well. If there's a better link even for us to share, you know, Larry and Sandy, you can let me know, and I'd be happy to post that in the comments here as well. But wanted to just talk to you both a little bit about the book. And I know that well, first of all, maybe you could tell us just some of the inspiration around why you all decided to put pen to paper. I know a lot of it is the results of, again, a lifelong journey that you both have had doing this kind of work. And so there's lots of really good evidence-based insights that you all give on the power of building bridges and how to do it well and when it's important to do it. In the early part of the book, you all talk a lot about, as you were talking earlier, about how important it is to begin to build these bridges with our children and how it has a really powerful impact for them as they're going up, because I guess, unfortunately, the later in the game that you do start it, while it is possible to make progress, it is much harder. And so maybe talk a little bit again about some inspiration around why you all wrote the book and then some of the key concepts and insights that folks can gain from it.
That's great, Michael. We'll be glad to do that. Let me mention another place. This may have been the link you posted. I couldn't tell, but if not, foreverbooks.net.
Okay.
Community bookstore in St. Joe possible copies of our book, and we always like to support community bookstores whenever possible.
Great. I'll post that one as well.
Great, thank you. So we've been thinking about writing this book for many years as we got increasingly involved in the Race Relations Council, in Calling All Colors, in All God's Children. And the feeling that we had is it would be so good if we could write a book about all of these things and about some of the principles that we've used to try to build bridges. And so to work on it, and then we get busy doing the initiatives, and we put it aside. And eventually, a couple of years ago, we said, we really need to just make a commitment to doing this. And so we did, and we worked very hard on it. And we were finally in a position where we could send some chapters out to a publisher, and we were fortunate that Peter Lang Publishers was interested in writing the book. They said we need to get in touch with a colleague not associated with where you teach, which is Lake Michigan College. And fortunately, our friend and colleague Michael Nixon was willing to do that, and he said to them, yes, publish this book, and we are forever appreciative.
Sure, my pleasure.
Larry's not giving himself enough credit. A bunch of these we's that he just offered you all need to be modified. One of us had more discipline about putting pen to paper, as you said, Michael. And what Larry would say to me is, we can't be so swamped in the doing that we don't make a record of it and we don't share it, so that in other towns, in other villages, in other parts of the country, people can learn what we've learned, and they can replicate some of the programs that have made a difference. So it was his urging, some might say nagging, but I'm sticking with urging. It was his urging that allowed it to actually eventually come to fruition. And I do think that the book reflects a complementarity that we're lucky enough to have in our relationship. Larry was the head of research for the Family Institute that was part of Northwestern when we lived in the Chicago area. And so he's a research guy. He devours it, he integrates it, he internalizes it, and then he puts it out there when we need it to shore up our argument. And so the vast majority of the research in our book is research that he uncovered, and I think it lends credibility to some of our assumptions. And I think of myself as a storyteller, and a lot of the lessons I've learned in my life that I've learned through people's stories. And so I tried to extricate stories from each of the initiatives that illustrate one of the principles of bridge building. And so I feel like whether you as a reader are somebody who's especially drawn to research, or who, like myself, is more likely to remember a story to illustrate a principle, there's something for everybody in the way we put these concepts out there.
And let me say a word about the research. I do think it's very important that books like ours be evidence-based, but I also think it's important not to bore people with too many details about the technical aspects of the research. So we've tried not to do that. We've tried to just capture the essence of what was done and what was found in very clear, non-jargony ways, so that people can appreciate both aspects of this.
Great. No, that's beautiful. And as we're starting to wrap up here, talk to me a little bit about in particular, and you talk about it in the book, but you could share really whatever reflections you'd like to, again, in regards to the work that you all have been doing with children around building bridges, and whether that's with the Calling All Colors Choir. I think, and I've heard you all perform a couple of different times, and what's always amazing to me in seeing you all perform is that inevitably, I think every time I've seen you all perform, first of all, it's so obvious that in everything you all do, it's all about the kids. And so it's not the Larry and Sandy show or whatever the case may be, because there's sometimes when folks do that kind of thing, you could tell they're kind of living their dreams through the kids or whatever the case may be. And so invariably, every time I've seen you all perform, you'll always invite someone up to conduct a song. And it's usually someone who was in the choir themselves, and then their child is currently in the choir, and so it speaks to this legacy in this long-term work that you all have been doing around bringing folks together in our community, building bridges across things like music and the arts, and just the power of that. And so, yeah, just talk to us a little bit more about that and about why it's been so powerful, and why you all believe that it's so critical to our future and hopefully developing more bridge builders.
Well, I think that one of the great joys in our life, Michael, is to see families continue to be in touch with one another after their kids have graduated from the choir and moved on. And one of the things we feel thrilled about is that an anonymous donor several years ago, feeling inspired by the friendships she saw generated not just between the children, but their parents and grandparents, said that she didn't notice the economic disparity because there is no activity fee and everything's provided in the choir. And so she said it wasn't until junior year of high school, when kids were starting to make college applications, that it was clear that there were differences in families' financial status. And so she made a large donation, which is managed by the Berrien Community Trust, so that people that are in the choir through high school are able to have access to $10,000 for their college education.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it's made a huge difference, and we've had now 13 former choir members that have been able to go to college, and one using the money into grad school in social work. Based on this. And sometimes we'll see a Facebook post where somebody that grew up with another friend across racial or ethnic lines is visiting them at their college for the weekend to help them with their difficult class that student mastered. And so watching that continuity is so important. And we did say at the outset that we wouldn't begin without leadership that reflected the children. So before we started, we were lucky enough to recruit Hercel Cole, an African-American choir director that just has such spunk and such ability to energize the group, and Corey Hampton, a wonderful African-American fella who directs the Kojic Church's choirs. And so we have a team that reflects the friendships and the intimacy that we want the children and their families to develop. And Hercel's daughter was our first child soloist at age 10.
Wow.
And Courtney is now a mom herself, a director of the choir, and her little boy, who's 6 years old, is in the front row singing away. So that continuity in life has been so important. And those folks go on to be advocates and anti-racists in the various contexts that they live.
Sure.
So the choir has been great. We're involved in two children's programs, and often the names get mixed up. So let me to clarify. So the choir is the All God's Children Community Choir.
Got you.
And the other program is Calling All Colors, which is a program bringing elementary school classrooms from St. Joe and Benton Harbor together a couple of times a year, and then again at the end of the school year for a family picnic. And they also do pen pal communications and occasionally video communications. And those two programs are complementary. The choir gets together a lot more often, and so the bonds are formed each time they come together. Calling All Colors comes together less often, but there's a lot more people. 1,000 kids a year come together in Calling All Colors. The choir is usually 20 to 40 people. And Calling All Colors happens in first, second, third, and fourth grade. So by the time the kids have graduated from elementary school, they have had a lot of contact with one another. And that's worked. Both programs have been terrific.
Larry, do you want to share that quote the little boy said that you were mentioning yesterday about Calling All Colors?
One of the early teachers asked her students to write little essays about their Calling All Colors experience. And one student, I don't remember now whether it was a boy or a girl, but he wrote, if everybody could have calling all colors, we might be able to have Dr. King's dream come true.
Wow. Wow, that's beautiful. And I think that's a beautiful place for us to end. Unfortunately, we were out of time, but I think that having that hope and that outlook of a child, I think really it is what we need in order to see Dr. King's dream come closer to fruition. And so once again, to you both, Larry and Sandy, so honored to know you both, so honored to be in the same community with you all in this fight for justice. You mentioned earlier regarding, and I'm sure folks from past generations who are Black, who are advocates, who maybe in this moment are feeling a bit tired. And I think that the testament to you both is the fact that I'm sure during the civil rights movement, you stood along folks who were tired, and you're standing along folks who are tired now. And whenever I start to feel like, man, I'm getting a little tired, I remember, hey, man, you're in your early 30s, but it's time. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep moving. And you both are definitely sources of inspiration, and often in times where it can be difficult to have these conversations, you all just have a grace and an approach that really does help build bridges, which we need. And so thank you both again. We could talk maybe for the entire day if we could about this, but you all have shared so much powerful information. So again, just really glad that you all were able to spend this time with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
It's always good to be with you.
And the feelings are totally mutual.
Great. Appreciate it. And so thank you all for joining us for this conversation. Again, if you want to get your co-curricular credit, there should be a link in the description for this video. We'll also put it in the chat for you. I'll mention again, if you want to get involved with our Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Campus Center work, send us an email at diversityatanandrews.edu, and we will get in touch with you there. And I'll remind you again, first of all, happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Be on the lookout for more exciting events that we'll have, and also be on the lookout for our voting week information. Really important for you to get registered and involved. So we'll be in touch with you on that soon. So thank you all again for joining us, and we'll see you next week for our Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Campus Center Co-Curricular series. Take care.